This one is going to blow your mind. Incidents like this you're about to see reveal the many legal loopholes that leave you vulnerable because a person with a multi-million-dollar mansion in Raleigh, North Carolina, woke up one day to find their house deed transferred to someone else's name. While this is not financial advice, there is so much I need to tell you about this story, so subscribe and take a look at this before we dive in.
A tough spot to be in for Craig Adams, the owner of this beautiful 8,300 square foot home in North Raleigh. He does have it listed for sale, but has lived in it for the last 4 years, paying the mortgage and property taxes. But he just discovered the deed to his home, no longer in his name. Instead, it lists a complete stranger.
Found out that she had filed a false warranty claim deed against this house, basically trying to steal this home.
She being someone named Dawn Mangum. Craig only learned about Mangum getting the deed in her name after the property management company for his HOA asked if he sold his home, as Mangum contacted the management company to get gate access, since Craig's home sits in a private gated community. This paperwork filed with the Wake County Register of Deeds office, signed by Mangum, states Craig Adams as a debtor, along with Dawn Mangum estate. And Wake County approved the deed transfer to Dawn Mangum Trust. Craig went to the Wake County Register of Deeds to question how this happened.
Now, this shows you one thing above all else, which is how the law and the bureaucratic systems that enforce it are often skating on thin ice, and anyone with knowledge of their right loopholes can exploit them. Remember, a deed is practically the final document denoting ownership over a property, and the Register of Deeds in Wake County says they process over 500 deeds a day. That's a vital choke point because that level of load means checking individual details or contacting owners is not feasible without significantly slowing down the entire process. But here's where the problem likely happens. The Register of Deeds is the government body that puts the deeds in the public record. The job of verifying the multiple factors around a property usually falls within a title company or an attorney representing the buyers. Since Dawn Mangum is in this example appearing to have acted on her own, it's possible that her being at the end of the process or transferring the deed was able to bypass the checks and balances that should have been there all along the way. Here's section 16114 of the North Carolina General Statute that reads in part, after the Register of Deeds has determined that all statutory and locally adopted prerequisites for recording have been met, the Register of Deeds shall immediately register all written instruments presenting to him for registration. When an instrument is presented for registration, the Register of Deeds shall endorse upon it the day and hour on which it was presented. That relieves the primary responsibility of verification away from the Register office, prioritizing speed and efficiency and relegating verification to lower departments. And in the end, it was the original owner, Craig Adams, who had to take on the hassle of figuring the entire mess out, especially with his $4 million house on the line.
Nobody verifies who owns the house that's trying to be transferred to a different owner.
Craig says once he proved he's the owner of the home and Dawn Mangum has no stake in it, the deed still stays in Dawn Mangum estate.
They say there's absolutely nothing they can do to reverse this once it's filed. Their only solution is that I have to go hire a private attorney, and the first quote I got was about $8,000 to file a civil suit against this woman.
A representative for Wake County says under North Carolina law, the Register of Deeds is not required to verify the legal validity of a deed when it is presented for registration, nor are they required to verify the credentials or legal standing of the notary or drafter of the document. She adds as soon as they became aware of the fraudulent deed, it alerted the tax administration office that no tax information for the property should be changed. A representative also said because the deed has been recorded, the Register of Deeds office does not have the authority under North Carolina state law to remove the document from the record without a court order.
And this is where the trouble usually begins for the original owner, because it has to do with the owner that pursues the case and takes it up to the higher ends of the council and state government. And that obviously costs a lot of money in legal fees, not to mention the time and mental toll it takes with a complex legal matter. Right now, this is still a developing story because we'll probably hear more from the higher courts about how Craig Adams gets his house back. But on the other end, the person who originally claimed ownership of this house, Dawn Mangum, is behind bars facing charges of fraudulency trying to register a deed in their name. Dawn's justification for it didn't make a lot of sense either when she said that she was just trying to claim a house for herself that had been abandoned after a foreclosure. But that's obviously not how things work. You can't just claim a foreclosed house as your own. And neither does foreclosure mean the house is abandoned to begin with.
You know, Dawn Mangum still behind bars tonight. The judge actually increasing her bond. As the assistant DA said, there's a possibility of more charges besides just this one of attempting to obtain property under false pretenses.
In jail through video conference, Dawn Mangum made her first appearance on a felony charge of attempting to obtain property under false pretenses. Mangum facing the charge after she says she obtained this warranty deed to Craig Adams' North Raleigh 8,300 square foot home. Adams in court to see Mangum, who he says is a complete stranger and filed this deed on his home.
A little bit of relief, but it's still a nightmare to try and unwind this mess.
When we spoke to Mangum last week, she said everything was done by law, as she thought the property was in foreclosure, and she believes by law you can claim an abandoned property. Once she learned the property isn't in foreclosure, she said she stopped all paperwork. Adams says foreclosure was noted on an online listing website, but it was a mistake and corrected. In court, Mangum making no statements except asking for a public defender who did argue for her bond to be lowered. But the judge denied that request and said upping it to $150,000 due to the assistant DA saying there could be more charges against her.
We are not going to assign any motives to why Dawn Mangum did something like this, but there's no doubt that she exposed a fatal flaw in the legal technicalities that will likely be closed after this entire process is over. The original owner, Craig Adams, alleges that Dawn was a squatter that wanted to live in this house illegally, but that's just an allegation at this point. She did halt all proceedings on the paperwork when she found out that there was already an owner for the house. Dave also suggested that his house had earlier been mistakenly listed as foreclosed, which had to get corrected. Just goes to show how even small inefficiencies in the system can balloon into much larger problems.
This charge comes after our investigation where we showed you how Mangum was able to obtain a deed to Craig Adams' 8,300 square foot North Raleigh home in a gated community. When we spoke to Mangum last week, she said everything was done by law as she thought the property was in foreclosure, and she believes by law you can claim an abandoned property. Once she learned the property was not in foreclosure, she said she stopped all paperwork. Mangum was just arrested about an hour ago in Raleigh. She is due in court tomorrow.
It could be the start of a protracted legal battle for him, but we can hope that the high authorities in courts find the most reasonable solution while also establishing if there was any malicious intent involved on part of Dawn. And while this particular incident is happening in North Carolina, there could be a lesson for other states to iron out the inefficiencies and legal loopholes in their systems that could lead to something like this. Let me know in the comments what you think about this entire story, because it's a window into how important it is for everyone to understand the legal framework around home ownership to get out of trouble like this.